waiting for my clothes to finish washing at the wash house. And I want to talk for a second about the difference between helping someone and enabling someone. Because, like, it's getting out of hand at this point. Like, we really need to have this discussion. Let's start with money. The only person who you can help, the only type of person who you can help with money is somebody who you know a little bit about their childhood and they never had it easy. They were always somebody who was independent, always somebody who got it on their own, always somebody who, you know, just never depended on anybody. And they just found themselves in a position to where, you know, this time they just don't have it. You know, things happened or whatever, and they just, you know, got put in a situation where they're in need of some monetary help, right? This, again, you have to think about this person's track record, the type of person that this person is. And I'm going to go through it again. The only person who you can truly help with money is somebody who is naturally an independent person. It's somebody who pays their own bills. Their bills are paid on time usually. They take care of themselves. They never really ask for anything. And then out of the blue, you see that they need something. And usually this is the type of person that would never ask. Like, they could be suffering. Like, usually you would have to see them suffering and offer them something for them to be like, okay. And usually they're still not going to be like, okay, no, they're going to be like, no, I'm all right, or whatever. They're not going to be willing to accept anything from you because of the type of personality that they have. Those are the only people who you can help with money. Why? Because those people already understand a very important concept, which is independence. They understand what it is to get it on their own. So when we use that excuse of, oh, you know, things happen and, you know, I just need to, everybody goes through rough patches or whatever, that's true. That's true. Everybody does go through rough patches. But you're not going to be able to help somebody with money who is always going through a rough patch, because they're never going to get it, because they haven't come to the concept of independence. They have been taught to be fully dependent on people. So let's start talking about those kind of people. We're talking about the people who are always in some drama, always in the middle of something, always in trouble, always needing something, always calling you for money, can never get their life together. Their relationships are a hot mess. Those type of people you can never help with money. You can never help with letting them come to stay with you. You can never help them with all those things that we think are helping. And I know it comes from you know, we have big hearts, we want to help people, but we have to understand that with those type of people, what they truly need is emotional support, not financial support. You can help the person with financial support who I said, you know, who we're talking about in the beginning, who is already independent, because that person, they understand what it is to get it on their own. So when you give them something, they're going to appreciate it 10 times more, because they know, like, dang, like, I know what it takes to get this. And if you're willing to give it to me, like, I'm hella grateful about that, because I know what it is to pay my own bills. I know what it is to have to be doing everything on my own, and then, you know, to give to somebody else. Like, I know what that is, right? They understand it, so they'll appreciate it. Not only appreciate it more, but it will actually help them, because they're going to take that money and they're going to use it for what they said they needed it for. They're going to use it for the bills. They're going to use it to turn back on their lights, or whatever situation they found themselves in. But that person who is emotionally fucked up, for lack of a better term, you're never gonna help them by giving them money, because guess what they're gonna go do with it? Buy drugs, do some more foolishness, get in some more trouble. And that's not because they don't appreciate what you're doing for them. It's because that fundamental thing that they were lacking, that made them do all of that to begin with, that made them be in all that drama, that made them get into trouble all the time, it's not being addressed with your money. It's not being addressed by you coddling them and doing things for them. They need to be supported emotionally. All right, so now that we've, you know, talked about that. What does emotional support look like? Calling them, checking up on them. Hey, I know you're trying to do this one thing. Let's sit down one day for a couple hours and I'll go through it with you. Like, you want to get into school? Let's sit down for a couple hours and fill out the application. Let's something emotional. And you don't want to jump straight into that with them, right? You want to build up it, and it has to be a genuine like care, like a genuine concern for their emotions. Like I said, call them. I'm just calling to check up on you. What's, you wanna, like, let's talk, what's going on, whatever. Being that listening ear for them, being that person that they can confide in. But again, that could turn into something to where they're being dependent on you. So you want to kind of be a little like, you can't be too much with that kind of stuff, especially the people that are emotionally needy. You can't give too much, because all they're going to do is take, right? So what they need is, they need support in how to be independent. Because when you're totally like emotional and totally in your emotions, you have no clue what it is to be independent. So that is what's going to help those type of people. Instructions in how to be more independent in their life. So letting them come to stay with you is not it. Finding a place, like a shelter or some place for them to stay, is a better way to help. But still, that's not going to address, the other stuff, because like I said, the emotional stuff needs to be taken care of. So that's just a little bit on, because it's like, it's really, really, really pissing me off. I told you guys that I'm back home now, and being around my family is just like, it's really, God, it really reminds me of why I don't like stay around here. Like, it's just, it's too much. It really is. It really is. And at this point, like, yeah. Anyway, so I think that's all I wanted to say about the difference. Like, it's one thing to want to help people, but we got to understand like what the difference is between. And then like, I don't know if I mentioned this, but this is another thing that I really want to mention. The people who like were emotionally supported more so when they were growing up, like they become entitled. Like, there's a sense of entitlement there with some people, and it's like, you should want to help me. Like, you should help me, because that's what people are supposed to do. And there's no like sense of gratitude. There's no sense of anything else. Like, and then they have the audacity, the nerve, the gall to be upset when you don't want to help them. And then they get petty and they do all of this other stuff. Like, and I understand, like, I get that comes from an emotional place, because they haven't felt emotionally stable. That was another thing that I wanted to talk. I knew I was staying on this video because there was something else that I wanted to say that I almost forgot to say. When it comes to parents and their children, a way that you are not helping your child and not really realizing it is not allowing them to be independent. I've seen some parents who like don't let their kids go in the fridge without asking. Like, they have to ask to do everything. As far as something like as small as like going in the fridge and getting something when they're hungry. I understand where that comes from as a parent. You don't want them to be eating up all the stuff because there's a certain amount of money that you have, and you bought the groceries, you want them to last for a little bit, whatever. Okay, fine, but that's not the way to go about it, because what ends up happening later on in life is eventually they're going to get to a point where they become an adult, and there's not going to be anybody there to ask permission to get something out of the fridge. So a few things are going to happen because of that. Either they're not going to buy groceries for themselves at all, and there's never going to be anything in their house because they don't even know how to go to the grocery store and buy stuff, because you always made them wait for you to do things. Or they're going to buy the groceries and they're gonna treat their kids and other people the same way that you treated them, without understanding like there's a better way to go about it. You can teach your kids like, hey, the value of $1. Like, I bought these groceries, I had a certain budget this month, like, let's go to the grocery store, I'm gonna show you my budget. Like, and of course this is when they get to a certain age. Like, I think around 7 is a good age to start having those type of conversations with your kids. But having them ask you to go in the fridge, like, I just think that that's ridiculous. And that's just one example of how we, not we because I'm not a parent, but how parents do a disservice to their children, really. And then wonder why, as an adult, your child is completely dependent on other people and still dependent on you and doesn't want to move out and can't do anything for themselves and struggles to maintain relationships and is always asking you for money and is always asking you for something because you always did everything for them when they were a kid. You never taught them how to do it. Like, another good example is laundry. And this is especially for the boys. A lot of times, I don't know what's going on nowadays, but back in the day, boys were not taught how to do laundry. I remember my brother and I went to the laundromat with my mom. So he has an idea of how to do laundry, but she only had me help her fold the clothes. So that's a little bit of a step up from, I'm sure, what was going on before even me, like during her period of time or whatever, or when she was a child. I'm sure that the boys didn't even go to the laundromat, or they weren't even involved in the laundry process. So like, that type of stuff is just, we're not realizing how that's a disservice, because when they get older, they're going to be dependent on a woman now to do their laundry, or somebody else to do their laundry. And that's fine if they're rich, or they find a wife who's willing to keep up those old school type ideals. But good luck with that, because that is slowly fading out. Like, I'm okay with doing laundry in a relationship, but there are just certain things like that rub me the wrong way. Like, you need to be able to do your own laundry. Like, it's just basic. You need to be able to know how to take care of yourself. Like, I just don't, it's not really making sense to me. Like, a grown man can't do his own laundry, doesn't clean up after himself, doesn't understand basic self-maintenance skills. It's just like, and I like I said, I'm not here to judge anybody. I know exactly where it comes from. I just want to make it like, I just want to have this conversation because we're not having it, and like I said, it's getting to that point where it's ridiculous. It's too much. It's too much. It's not working at all, and something needs to be said. So yeah, let's just be a little bit more mindful when we're raising our kids. When you guys are raising your kids, I keep saying we. When you guys are raising your kids, just be a little bit more mindful of ways that you can still get what you want to get accomplished, but at the same time not compromise their independence, because they're gonna need that. Your job as a parent is not to mold them into the type of person that is least obstructive to you, because I find that that's what a lot of parents do. They find a way to shape their child into something that doesn't bother them, doesn't ask them for anything, doesn't need them, you know, whatever, or needs them, depending on the type of parent. Like, basically, I guess what I'm trying to get at is the parents mold their kids into what the ideal version of what they think a person should be, rather than fostering who that person already is, one, and two, fostering what they're going to need when they become adults. We don't think about the long term. Like, at some point, this child is going to grow up and become an adult. What do we want that to look like? Do we want it to look like them constantly having to call us? Because that's what's happening. It's a problem. Like, it really, really is. Think about it. It really is a problem. We get mad at them when they become adults. Oh, you're constantly in trouble and you constantly calling me and you need me. And that's when we get mad at them, but don't realize you created that. You created that. So don't create it in the first place. Then you don't have to deal with it later. and then they can be a better member of society later, a better husband to somebody, a better father to somebody, a better friend to somebody, a better son or daughter or whatever to you. Like, come on, people, please. And I'm not on a high horse because that's another reason I don't have kids, because that shit is like, it's a lot to think about. But I think we don't think enough about how much it is to think about before we actually like bring somebody into this world. More thought needs to go into that, because I'm gonna be honest, like, I'm not ready for all of that. Like, I don't, that's another reason why I don't want to have kids. It's a lot. It is a lot. You are responsible for somebody else's well-being. You're responsible for who that person becomes 18 years from now. And people, like, I just don't, it's not making sense to me, like, how you could get pregnant or get somebody pregnant and just think, okay, well, now the kid has to figure it out. Guys, I'm gonna stop because I'm about to be I'm already doing the most, which is fine because I'm always doing the most, but I'm gonna stop right here. I hope you guys have a nice rest of your Sunday whenever you're watching this, and until next time, be well. So I realized there was something else that I left out of the previous video that I wanted to share with you guys. We talked about how people who are always in something are really in need of emotional support, but we didn't really talk much. Like, we talked a little bit about what emotional support looks like, and we talked about how, like, checking up on them would be helpful. But another thing is, those people, we kind of touched on it, but I didn't get into like this part. So a lot of times people who are emotionally needy like to vent a lot, and this happens with men and it happens with women. And as I was putting my stuff in the dryer, it hit me, like, so I was thinking about like the idea hit me, and then I started applying it to like my previous relationships. And when people, and even me, when I was in a phase of wanting to vent a lot, it was because I lacked validation. I was looking for validation because I had lacked that in my childhood. I was always being invalidated in some form or another. My feelings were invalidated, my intelligence, my everything. So like when I became an adult, I was looking for people to validate me. And that put me in a lot of compromising situations. And I see that it puts a lot of men in compromising situations, because all it takes is for one woman to get into your life with the wrong intentions. Like, she has the wrong intentions, but because she validates you, she tells you all the things that you want to hear, she uplifts you and makes you feel confident and makes you feel wanted, you basically open yourself up to her and you allow yourself to be used by her in various different ways. And it happens with women the same kind of way. We get with a man who validates us, and he, can then come stay with us, and we start giving him money and, the whole 9 yards, right? So it works both ways. Women don't just do it to men, and men don't just do it to women. That's the way that it works, and that's why it happens, because what we're really looking for is validation. And until we get to the point of where we validate ourselves, or because being able to get to that point of validating yourself, there's levels to it. You don't just jump to self-validation. Like, you need a little bit of help from some people, right? And a lot of times when people validate you emotionally, it's for them to get something out of it. And that's why I kind of touched on, like, it has to come from a genuine place when you're being emotionally supportive to another person. Don't do it just so you can get something out of them. Or do it so you can get something out of them. That's your prerogative. I just want, what do I want? I want a lot of things from this video. But I think the main thing that I want is for people who really need this to get what they need. Yeah. So just give that some thought. Like, When your spouse is coming home and they're venting to you and it's super annoying, just validate them. Tell them something like, I know that sounds like really, what happened today was really fucked up, but I know you'll figure it out at some point. And then just leave it at that. They might still want to keep talking, but it might shut them up right then and there, because what they actually needed was that validation. It might take a couple of times, but just give it a try. Try it for a month. And every time they want to vent to you, say something positive to them. Say something uplifting to them. Tell them that they'll figure it out. Tell them that, if they're complaining about somebody at work, tell them, I know you would never do anything like that. I know you would never be like that, and that's why it bothers you. But you just got to accept people for who they are. And then they might bring it up again, because it's really a deep need for them. So of course it's not going to go away with just one act of validation. It's going to take a few. It might take more than a month. But if you're really wanting to help, because that's another thing too. Sometimes people use help as like a guise to really manipulate another person. So if you're genuinely wanting to help that person, it shouldn't matter how many acts of validation or how many times you have to validate them. It shouldn't matter. If your true intention is to help them, it might take a year of validation and you wouldn't care, because your true intention is to help, right? So, and they might take that year, you help validate them, and then they get to the point where they start validating themselves and they might want to leave you after that. And that has to be okay. That's another part of like unconditional love that I think a lot of people don't understand and are afraid of, because again, we're getting into relationships with people based on attachment and based on comfort and based on all of these things that don't really matter, rather than the right reasons. Relationships, the only purpose for them is growth and change. So you might grow and change with a person for 50, 70, 80 years. And you guys are just you guys just fit that well, and you're able to like be flexible, and you're able to grow and change with each other. Or there isn't any growth and change, and you're both okay with that. But something has to be happening for people to stay together for a bunch of years at a time. And that's why people aren't staying together for as long nowadays, because this is the season of growth and change. We're starting to realize that that's what the purpose of relationships are. But our morals and our ideas of relationships aren't really caught up with what we know and what the universe already knows, because that's what's happening. Relationships are meant for growth and change. And if you can't understand that, then you're not going to be in a relationship for very long, or you're going to be in one for the wrong reasons. So that's what I really wanted to add to the conversation. And I'm realizing a lot of times when I could have been I could have validated somebody a little bit more in my own relationships, and times when I was looking for validation and didn't realize that that's what I was looking for. But now that I'm aware of it, I'm not looking for it to automatically happen now in my relationships, but at least now I can have that conversation. At least now the communication can happen. People talk, and that's another thing, people talk a lot about communication, but when are we going to have the conversation about what communication actually looks like? Like, what is the proper way to communicate? Like, you can communicate, but if you don't have like that, like we're talking about right now, the knowledge of, dang, I'm venting because I really need validation. How can you communicate that to your partner if you don't even know that that's what you needed? You just thought you were venting. You just knew like venting makes me feel better in some kind of way. Like it makes me feel a little bit better. Kind of like the conversation that we had about Satima with the high sex drive. We think that high sex drive is just the way that it is. No, there's something underneath that. A lack of intimacy. But because we don't know that the lack of intimacy is really the problem, we just address the high sex drive. And that's what we communicate. Oh, well, I just have a high sex drive, so you're just going to have to deal with it, or we're going to have to figure out how to how to address it, like, you know, can I have a side chick or whatever, like, and none of that is going to fix the actual problem. It is just a band-aid to put on it, because the actual problem is lack of intimacy. Now, when you're aware, you can come back to the table and have true communication and be able to communicate and say, hey, what I'm really lacking is intimacy. I need you to hug me more. I need you to kiss me more. I need us to have deep conversations. For all those sapiosexuals out there, people who, you know, need a mental connection to somebody to be able to feel sexual desires towards them. That's me. Like, I need conversation. So like, to be able to communicate, you have to know that type of stuff. So it isn't just communication that's lacking in relationships. It's the understanding of oneself. It's the understanding of what we really need, and not focusing in on this bullshit, high sex drive and venting and all of these other buzzwords that are coming out now in relationships. There's stuff underneath it. Emotional stuff that we are not, you know, having enough conversation about. And so now I think we're at the end of the conversation. All right. See you guys next time.